Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. I'm very happy to see you all. It is a very great honor for me to be able to introduce today Burhan Sonmez, which is the lecturer for this inaugural series of Trinity lectures in the Global Humanities, which, as you might know or you might not know, is a collaboration between Trinity College and the Global Humanities Initiative based at the School of Arts and Humanities. Before I go on to introduce my dear friend Burhan, I want to take this as an opportunity to tell you very briefly a little bit about the Trinity Global Humanities lecture series, of which, as I mentioned, Burhan will be our first lecturer. Basically, the idea is that this lecture series will happen at Trinity each year and will bring to Cambridge major figures working at the forefront of the humanities globally. Each lecture will come usually for an intensive month or so of engagement, during which they will give around 4 or 5 lectures that speak to common concerns and excitements in the humanities today, meet also with Cambridge scholars and academics and students, and live and work at Trinity College. The series will try to prioritize new voices less heard from Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and South America. I want to begin also by thanking Trinity College for making this possible, for kindly establishing what promises to be an excellent series, and definitely Ann Toner in particular, who, as well as Samita Shen and Adrian Paul, were fundamental for setting up this wonderful new lecture series. As I said, this lecture series in the Global Humanities is part of a broader Global Humanities initiative. The Global Humanities Initiative was founded and established in 2020 and has one very simple but very ambitious aim, which is to permanently transform the way we teach, the way we research, and the way we think about the humanities more broadly. The network, which is anchored at Cambridge University, brings together leading universities from all over the world. Right now we have 6 institutions: Fudan and Nanjing universities in China, Ashoka University in India, the American University of Beirut in Lebanon, the Universidad Diego Portales in Chile, and the Sabancı University in Turkey. And the main idea is to bring again students and faculty together in ways, or new ways, that could create global connections, that could create structures and energy that will enable eventually to think of new ways of thinking together about the humanities. In this regard, I want to thank in particular Chris Young and Hans van den Ven, who played definitely a crucial role in the establishment of this series, and thank them also for creating such an amazing network, alongside Shruti Kapila and Ezra Osiurek. Thanks also to the amazing Greta Mijares, who has helped us coordinate these series that so far is going very well. So we're very happy and thankful to all of them. One of the very exciting elements of this series is that out of these 4 lectures that Burhan will give today, and out of the 4 or 5 lectures that lecturers will give in the coming years, there will come a book that will be published by Cambridge University Press. And I want to also begin by thanking Alex Wright, who is the head of humanities at Cambridge University Press, for this very generous and exciting offering. Having said that, I want to return to Burhan, the reason why we're here today. As I said, it gives me a very great honor to be able to introduce one of my very favorite international authors, and not only my favorite, but one of the world's most acclaimed contemporary novelists working in any language, I would say. Burhan Sonmez is a novelist and lawyer from Turkey. He's also currently, as you can see from the pin he's carrying here, the president of PEN International, the worldwide organization of writers for freedom of expression. His novels have been translated into more than 40 languages, which is definitely not an easy deed. And they have also received many prestigious prizes all throughout the world, including the EBRD Literature Prize, the Orhan Kemal Novel Award, and the Vaclav Havel Library Award. He received a law degree from the University of Istanbul and worked as a lawyer before moving to Britain due to political reasons. Some of you, of course, might recognize him as he's a familiar face in Trinity, being a senior member of this college as well as Hughes College, right? Burhan has decided to entitle this inaugural series of lectures the Homo Artifex series, and in it he will focus on the meaning of art and its place in the history of human civilization. And today we'll hear him with his inaugural lecture on Homo Artifex and the soul of art. So, having talked a little bit too much, I welcome you, Burhan, and I thank you all for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, Carlos. It's an honor to be introduced by you and being invited by dear colleagues, Hans, Chris, Greta, and my colleagues at Trinity. I would like to say thank you officially to University of Cambridge School of Arts and Humanities and Global Humanities Initiative, and to Trinity College for organizing Trinity Global Humanity Lecture Series and for inviting me to open it. Thank you for coming here on this beautiful day. Today and next few weeks, I will try to talk about the meaning of art and its place in the history of human civilization. Based on this sentence, we can ask the meaning of three words. What is art? What is human? And what is civilization? I will focus on the relationship between art and human beings. And starting from this, I will try to discuss what kind of cultural evolution the human species has undergone. The concept of civilization is easier to understand when used to distinguish humans from animals. But when used to compare human societies with each other, both differences and commonalities emerge. We can compare Western societies with Eastern societies. We can discuss women's struggle against male domination. And we can discuss the struggle of black people against whites. When we look from here, it is difficult to talk about a general concept of civilization, because it varies according to time and place. However, when we consider the animal species called human beings to distinguish them from other animal species, the concept of civilization can take on a more general character. My mother passed away last year. If she were alive, she would definitely give me advice about the content of these lectures, as she did with every novel I wrote. She was illiterate and lived in a small village in the central region of Turkey. I was born in that village, which had no electricity, and I grew up with the Kurdish tales told by my mother. We were children then. We had never seen television, and we didn't know that our language, Kurdish, was a forbidden language. When we moved to the town, I learned Turkish, the only official and compulsory language in the country. And later I went to Istanbul and studied law at the university. When I was at the university, it was during the military law in practice following a military coup. I was taken to a notorious torture center in Istanbul at the age of 19. According to official figures, the number of people arrested at that time was nearly 1 million, mostly youngsters. There were good people then, like there are today in this world. PEN International, the writers' organization of which I am currently the president, sent a 2-person delegation to Turkey at that time. These 2 people were Arthur Miller, the former president of PEN International, and Harold Pinter, vice president of English PEN. Their mission was to examine the oppression of writers and gather information. The year was 1985. And when the 2 delegates returned from Turkey, they had collected not only reports on human rights issues, but also stories. Harold Pinter wrote a play called Mountain Language. This play reflected the exact situation of the Kurdish people. In the play, soldiers tell families who come to see their relatives in prison that they are not allowed to speak the mountain language because such a language doesn't exist. But they are not able to speak another language. That was a true story, by the way. According to the official discourse, since the beginning of the 20th century in Turkey, there were no such people as Kurds. They were actually Turks. There was no such language as Kurdish. Since those tribes lived on the highlands in the mountains, isolated from the modern nation for centuries, their language was corrupted and turned into Kurdish. According to this discourse, our language was a corrupted form of Turkish, a mountain Turkish. I spent my childhood and youth hearing these official statements. If you ask me if anything has changed and improved, unfortunately, I would say no. As a mountain language speaker myself, the more I read books, the more I realized that the world was bigger than I imagined. I realized that the truth called humanity was also hidden from me. Humanity was the recognition of self. I was myself, and I existed differently. But at the same time, I had common values with other people. Art was one of the best ways for me to understand this truth. When I was little in the village, we used to run towards a rainbow when it came out after the rain. This was a game that kids loved very much, and we used to call it the fox's wedding. In Kurdish, Davata Ruvi. We believed that when the rainbow appeared, it meant there was the wedding of the foxes, and the foxes would give the kids a chance. If a kid could catch up with the rainbow and go under it or jump over it, he or she would be able to change to the gender they wanted. We were kids, and we were curious about the other gender, and we were running to catch the rainbow. I remember some of the kids ran harder than others and were out of breath. I hope they were able to reach that rainbow and go through it at some point in their lives. When I was a trainee lawyer, as a young man, someday I went to see a movie in Istanbul. It was a movie called Dreams by Japanese director Akira Kurosawa. This is a scene from Kurosawa's movie. The film was the collection of Kurosawa's stories that gave meaning to life from his childhood to old age. The first story in the movie looked very familiar to me. In a village in rural Japan, while it is raining, a mother gives advice to her son, who is Kurosawa. After the rain, there would be a wedding of foxes in the forest, mother says, and those foxes shouldn't be disturbed. But the boy doesn't listen to his mother, goes to the forest and secretly watches the wedding of the foxes. The foxes notice him. They go to his mother and complain about the boy. Mother tells her son that he needs to beg for his forgiveness. For this, he needs to find the foxes, and the house of the foxes can only be reached by passing under the rainbow. I was surprised to see the connection between foxes, rainbows, wedding, and children in the movie. How did we know this in my little village on the Anatolian steppe? And how come the villagers in Japan, 10,000 kilometers away, were encountering our foxes under their rainbow? What emerges in a Japanese movie or in a children's game in a Kurdish village is a mixture of art, play, pleasure, imagination, and another form of truth. What we call culture is something that differentiated, combined, and spread within these strange and fascinating phenomena. We can call this a magical being of human civilization, or rather, it was the magical being of foxes, as we can say that maybe we lived in the world of foxes without realizing it. this is also a scene from the same movie. These are foxes, the boy secretly watching them. What differentiates the human species from the fox species? We can list several things. Our language and our ability to imagine are unique to us. Our belief in God and supernatural powers, and our belief in mathematics and philosophy, and the things that we create by the name of art. These are some features that make us human beings. Thinkers have defined humans in different terms according to these characteristics. They called them Homo sapiens, wise human, because they were smart. Or they called them Homo faber, human, the maker, because they were a kind of animal that could make tools. Or Homo economicus, because they created a society through economy. Here I use the definition Homo Artifex, Latin name for the human, the artist, to state the place of art at the birth and development of human being. I will focus on the communication and differences of art with other disciplines, such as theology and philosophy. And I will discuss the various features of art, such as truth, beauty, and play. Today I'd like to begin with a story about Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Colombian novelist, who received the Nobel Prize in 1982 and passed away 10 years ago. When Gabriel Garcia Marquez's last novel, Memories of My Melancholy Horse, goes to printing house in 2004, 20 years ago, a problem occurs. The carefully guarded book is stolen from the printing house by a pirate and made available to the public on the black market. Marquez, angry at the pirate, stops the printing. He makes some changes in the last part of the book and publishes the book in its new form. He tells the readers to read the book he has prepared now, not the book that the pirate has stolen and presented. Which book should readers prefer? The one distributed by a pirate or the one Marquez changed and subsequently published? Which is the real book? In the world of possibilities, the pirates' position is that they have the true book and are doing good by sharing the truth with people. Contrary to this, the author claims that interference with truth is evil. He thinks like the ancient philosophers who explained the emergence of existence by intervening in the first essence. It goes like this. At the very beginning of time, there was only light, and everything was whole. Then evil arose and shattered this unity. As the light disintegrated, matter and darkness prevailed. If this evil didn't exist, neither darkness nor matter would emerge, and evil wouldn't find a home for himself. Everything would remain in an eternal light as one and whole. In Marquez's example, the author's final intervention is a claim for a new creation and unity against the evil that destroys the integrity of light. Because the pirate's stealing of the book shatters the original essence and corrupts its spirit. The creating author strives to reconstruct the truth according to the new situation and with a new sense of goodness. Claiming that the truth is an absolute and that this absolute is in their own hands, the pirate acts like the protector of the truth. They defend the truth against the author who created it, just like Satan opposing God. When God, as described in some religious beliefs, created a human being in their own image, they ordered everyone to kneel before the human. All supernatural beings obeyed this command. Only Satan objected. According to some thinkers, Satan wanted to show that God was the only one to whom they should kneel before. Satan tried to defend God's might in spite of God, reflecting the idea that If we kneel before a created being, it shatters the unity in God and destroys the primary meaning. When the author and the pirate get into a fight, the truth itself becomes a matter of dispute. That is the question. We know that human civilization has improved in diverse cultures, religions, philosophies, and histories. Having this in mind, I would like to call the opening period of human civilization epic time, and the following period concept time. In epic time, philosophy, poetry, nature were intertwined, while in concept time, philosophy was replaced by science, poetry by discovery, nature by human being. Epic time was the age of believing, while concept time, the age of reasoning. Aristotle, in his Metaphysics, explains the distinction between actuality and potentiality. Quote, "We say that potentially, for instance, a statue of Hermes is in the block of wood. Our meaning can be seen in the particular cases by induction, that which is waking to the sleeping, and that which is seeing to that which has its eyes shut, but has sight." End quote. Here we see not the seeing potential of a blind person, only the seeing potential of someone whose eyes are shut. It's logical, but art doesn't move in the field of logic. With its imagination, art goes one step further with an expression of desire for the seeing potential of a blind person, not just the seeing potential of someone whose eyes are shut. There would be no need for philosophy if we didn't wonder why we were born into time and why we were left out of time by dying. And there would be no need for art if we didn't imagine and dream while we were awake. Philosophy and religion grew into holistic disciplines, and in trying to define the truth, they each constructed a language appropriate to their own structure. Each language had a code that other languages couldn't express. Art also had a language, and the truth it grasped didn't exactly match the truth of other languages. The question preceding an answer was also different in each language. The question, "What is truth?" asked by mathematics or philosophy was not the same as the question, "What is truth?" asked by art. And the answers given by these languages were also different. The language of art wouldn't reflect the truth of philosophy, religion, or the everyday language of society, just as it didn't reflect the language of nature. It had a truth of its own. While I was writing my first novel, North, I was talking to my friends and sharing what I wrote with them. I was writing the novel with the inspiration of Kurdish tales and epics. It was a story that takes place before the birth of Jesus, when the earth's equinox shifted, leaving the zodiac of Aries and entering in the age of Pisces. It was the story of a young hunter who goes to the north in the hope of finding the secret behind his father's death. In the Kurdish stories my mother told, north was the forbidden direction. At the beginning of the tale, as my mother recounts, a hunter says that it is good to go hunting in any direction, but the north is cursed. There are unknown dangers, so it is forbidden to go there. But when hunter dies, his 3 sons and 1 daughter decide to go where their father said it was forbidden. I was not writing this book with the idea of becoming a novelist. When I was younger, my dream was to become a poet. I would write poems, publish them in magazines. As you know, poets see their other works as secondary, because being a poet itself is the primary essence of life. At that time, on my secondary site, I was a human rights lawyer. It was dangerous to be a human rights lawyer in Turkey in the 1990s, when intellectuals, journalists, academics were targeted in a campaign of assassinations. And one day, it was my turn. I survived the attempt of the police to kill me, but I was seriously injured. I had a fractured skull, a brain trauma, and was tied to the bed. I didn't know that it was just the beginning of a long period of health problems that would last nearly 10 years. While I was lying in bed, I couldn't do anything except watch TV, write in notebooks. When I read my notes in the notebooks months later, I felt that a novel could emerge from the stories I had written down. I decided to write with the inspiration of Kurdish legends, with the tone of Umberto Eco's novel, The Name of the Rose. In his novel, Umberto Eco wrote a crime story around the religious debates that took place in Europe in the Middle Ages. So I decided to set a story on the other side of the world, based on philosophical debates in the East, in the olden times. One of the sub-stories I used in the novel was a fairy tale my mother told. I wasn't going to use that tale verbatim, because in most of our tales, women were evil, and men killed them. In one tale, the woman was being unfaithful, and in another tale, the woman was betraying her brother by collaborating with the ogre. I made the woman good. When I used this tale in my novel, with the belief that this tradition, which I have felt uncomfortable with since my childhood, should be changed. I was talking to my friends while writing this. Then I encountered a strange objection. It was said that I am expected to write the truth, not change the truth. So I was supposed to write the story exactly as my mother told it. What was interesting to me about this claim was not the objection to my intention to change the story, but the description of the tale my mother told as true. It seemed both strange and meaningful to me that a tale told in a small village in the middle of nowhere, known only by a few people, was perceived as a truth that connects to the meaning of life. What is truth? When we asked, it was one of the miracles of human civilization that not only nature or human beings or the material things we produce, but also a made-up fairy tale with demons, fairies, and ogres were included in this truth. Art was a meaningful truth, and it was also meaningful for the artist to create new truths within that truth. I knew that I was taking both an ideological and ethical stance when changing the role of women in a story. In this respect, I felt that I was in the realm of Tolstoy's theory of the novel. In striving to break new ground, not only in literature, but also in religion, Tolstoy crowned literature with a religious aura of goodness, while reworking old texts in a new apostolic manner in his book, The Gospel in Brief. The first quote there. The understanding of life is this: the source of life is perfect goodness, and therefore human life is perfectly good in its nature. End quote. Extending this determination in religion towards the field of art, Tolstoy continued about 10 years later in his book, What is Art? Quote, art is a means of human communion, necessary for life and for the movement towards the good of the individual man of mankind, uniting them in the same feeling. End quote. In a world where nature, human being, religion, philosophy, science, and art were not separate, a peak time was able to create a holistic sense in human beings with the magical language of myths. But in concept time society, with the separation of states, nations, economies, and social relations with increasingly sharp divisions and subdivisions, humans also lost their former unity and suffered spiritual disintegration, whereby this disintegration distanced humans from a reality and at the same time brought them closer to acquiring a new reality. The intuition that the truth is not an idea to be discovered, but that it can only be created, was inherent in the meta-language of art. Humans evolved and developed with the power of this language. As they developed a godlike power within, they began to question the God outside. This was the reason they asked, what is God and what is human being? Human beings' adventure in existence was the transformation after 2,000 years of Odysseus, who fought bravely in sea storms, into Hamlet, who then wandered around a castle at night talking to himself, and then, 3 centuries later, found himself outside the castle as Kafka's K, the land surveyor. Hamlet, who lost his mind in the castle and sought the truth in the castle, was outside the castle as K in the New Age. However, the seas in front of him were unlike the old ones. The castle, Hamlet's space, was at the center of time. K, the land surveyor, endeavored to enter the castle as if he was outside time. In the reality of life and art, temporal change was spatial change. In the era of Ptolemaic cosmology, which placed the earth at the center of the universe, epic heroes like Odysseus were at the center of poetic narrative. After mighty struggle and controversy over the sun's centrality and the earth's subordination, sun was recognized and earth ceased to be a hero. And so humans lost their heroism in the pitiful way in which Don Quixote fell. Humans' God-given status as a supreme being was a thing of the past, and as solitary human beings, they accepted that the universe didn't revolve around them. The center had shifted, the epic was exhausted, and in the chaotic cosmos called society, they were now individuals trying to understand themselves. The paradigm of epic time was initially based on the balanced relationship of 2 worlds in which there were light and darkness, yin and yang, good and bad, and humans and gods. Life would attain meaning with positive and negative connections between these dualities. After a long-standing age when people looked at gods and gods at people, humans learned to look only at themselves. But the one who replaced the divine gaze with the human gaze began to lose this view and to look at everything, including themselves, with suspicion. In concept time, the paradox of poiesis episteme, art and knowledge, has emerged. During epic time, when humans' knowledge of life was still comparatively limited, art, with the belief that it could show the truth, attempted to reflect it, believing that it had succeeded. However, during concept time, when scientific knowledge has exploded in comparison to earlier ages and many new things have been learned about existence, art has retreated from the notion of truth and turned towards possibilities in the language of the unknown. Knowing has been replaced by understanding. Certainty has been replaced by probability, and monoreality has been replaced by polyreality. Humans at the center of everything have become individuals open to interpretation. Humans always wanted to be eternal because they believed eternal existence to be goodness and absence to be evil. While the dualistic view expressed by Plato divided every reality into 2 and erased transitivity between them, art went beyond the true-false dichotomy of this logic. It tried to transform everything by containing everything. As humans attempted to define evil, in the first classification, evil was perceived to exist in 3 states: natural, ethical, and metaphysical. While disasters express natural evil and human behavior, ethical evil, the mortality of humans was metaphysical evil. The metaphysical evil that makes death the fate of humans stood as a root evil. And while religion was trying to justify this evil and philosophy was trying to make it understandable, the poet who spoke about the being looked like a madman speaking into void. In order to overcome evil, it was believed that there was a divine essence in humans. This is where the power of existence came from. They didn't see that in God, however, there was a divine element. That was human being, hence the weakness of existence. While theology looked for the divine in human being, art did the opposite, revealing the non-divine in human being. Art was a mirror that allowed humans to see themselves. In this way, humans could build themselves. A question for thousands of years was this: God is either willing to remove evil and cannot, or he can and is unwilling, or he is neither willing nor able to do so, or else he is both willing and able. If he is willing and not able, he must then be weak, which cannot be affirmed of God. If he is able and not willing, he must be envious, which is also contrary to the nature of God. If he is neither willing nor able, he must be both envious and weak, and consequently not be God. If he is both willing and able, the only possibility that agrees with the nature of God, then where does evil come from? This dilemma of question has been with us at least since Epicurus in the ancient times. The answers, which philosophers sought to find with interpretations such as theodicy, and which religious authorities suggested by recommending believing instead of questioning, left evil within God's absolute power, while the humans of concept time saved God from this burden of evil by killing God. Some may claim that there is a connection between the question of God and poetry. They can say that humans created poetry to fill the void left by the absence of God. When I was a teenage boy, I went to both a regular secondary school and a private school for religious education, one in the morning and the other in the afternoon. I was memorizing the history and mathematics in the morning, and in the afternoon the Holy Quran, the life of the Prophet, and fiqh, Islamic law. On the other hand, I was trying to get rid of the questions that began to emerge in my mind about the existence of God. These were topics that a 13 or 14-year-old kid couldn't easily talk about with anyone. My elder brother was a university student and an active revolutionary during a time when Turkey was going through another civil war. At that age, I heard that the revolutionaries didn't believe in God, but I dismissed this thought with the conviction that these good people wouldn't deny God. One day, I gathered up my courage and asked my brother, "Do you think there is a God?" Rather than finding out what he thought, I was hoping he would say something that would ease my heart. He looked at me thoughtfully and said, "Don't force yourself to think about these kinds of subjects. You are still young. You will find the answer yourself when you get a little older." He was speaking almost like Wittgenstein, like the sentence in his book Tractatus, quote, "What we cannot speak about, we must pass over in silence," end quote. After a while, I went to my brother again, believing that there was another way to find the truth. "I want to be a revolutionary like you," I said. "Give me a book to learn this." Strangely believing that everything could be learned only through books at that age. "What do you want?" he said. "A book on revolution," I replied. He hesitated a bit, then said, "Okay, I will bring what you want." I don't remember how much time passed, but one day he came home and gave me 2 books. "Take them," he said. "These are revolutionary books for you." they were 2 books of poetry, and I believed him. Since I was a good student of religion who memorized prayers well, I started to read poems and memorize them like prayers. And at that young age, I indeed thought that poetry was the real revolution. The direction my brother drew for my life that day determined my entire future without me knowing it. And for me, poetry came to mean poiesis in the ancient sense, the whole life itself. In the following years, if I fixed the issue of God in my mind, if I held on to life instead of giving up when I was in desperate situations, and if I searched for the meaning of truth within philosophy books and novels, it was all thanks to poetry. But there was a question here. Are poets the voice of God or Satan? Because they were seen as people in communication with supernatural powers. While the ancient Greeks heard poetry as the voice of inspiration independent of reason, and the ancient Arabs said that poetry carried the voice of invisible forces, they regarded the poet as the medium of power that transcended boundaries. A similar question appeared when Gabriel Garcia Marquez changed the final version of his own book with anger at the pirate. It was a question of whether the hand that rewrote certain parts of the last chapter belonged to God or Satan. First question. Was what Marquez did right or wrong? Answer. It was wrong. Changing his book, which he had completed with a sense of aesthetic satisfaction, just to prevent the pirate from publishing it, was an intervention in the artistic integrity of the work. Second question. Was what Marquez did good or bad? What Marquez did was good, because the pirate stealing the work was an evil intervention in existence. The artist took refuge in the right to assert his own creative will in order to eliminate this evil. Third question, was what Marquez did beautiful or ugly? The answer is polypossibility, multi-possibility. Marquez's changes in the novel were artistically beautiful, perhaps ugly. The original chapters in the first version of the novel, now in the hands of pirate, were beautiful, perhaps ugly. Maybe both texts were beautiful, maybe both were ugly. The accompanying question, which is the true book, could be approached over the prism of question, is there a single truth? While thinkers enlarge this discussion, questions like what is truth has made both art and the whole intellectual culture productive, even if the answer is unknown and constantly changing. We can say that wrong answers to the right question are also meaningful and productive. And there is no right answer to a wrong question, as the wrong question cannot be answered correctly. It's an idea that being is based on one. Because people seek totality in existence, despite the infinite diversity within it. Every entity is unique and a number in itself. Every addition is a new one. When we look for totality, a forest is not a million trees. Each tree is one, and each forest is one. The addition of trees and the invention of numbers greater than one are humans' intervention in existence. It is similar to God creating one universe. The theological split arises from the opposition between the idea that God, who is one, creates one thing, universe, and the idea that God doesn't create, but only makes themselves visible through universe. The former is based on the logic of creation, the latter on the logic of reflection. Art's endeavor to eliminate this split, to intertwine creation and reflection, is the entire art civilization's expression of one, which spread from Platonic reflection to romantic overflow. The greatness of art doesn't arise from the beauty it creates in a moment of time, but from the possibility of creating a new beauty every day. The beauty of the first one feeds the longing for a future one. Art is one counter-creation over one being. The one that Marquez created and lost to the pirate, and the one that he later recreated by making changes are different things. Each one is original and unique. In the relationship between human being and art, human being is perceived as content and art as form, whereas reality is the opposite. Art itself is content. Human form transforms by assimilating the content of art. From the moment humans began to create art, they were also created by art. While human beings developed certain characteristics, such as Homo sapiens, Homo faber, or Homo economicus, from their very beginnings, they were also Homo artifex, human, the artist. When drawing pictures on cave walls or singing together during collaborative work, they were dreaming of the next day. Consciousness and dreaming took them beyond other living things. Last one. Aristotle outlines the characteristics of humans at the beginning of his work, Metaphysics, saying, "All men by nature desire to know." But Wittgenstein says at the end of his philosophical tractatus, "What we cannot speak about, we must pass over in silence." A poetical tractatus, on the other hand, would begin as follows. What we cannot speak about shall be recreated and reborn in the void of art. That void can only be comprehended by the language of Homo artifex. That is today. Thank you very much.